In Part B of April 2024, Question 5, Part B reads, Rahisi Social Club provided the following information from their records for the year ended 31st March 2024. Number 1, as at 1st April 2023, the club's bank balance was 7,050,000 shillings. Number 2, during the year ended 31st March 2024, the amount of subscription received amounted to 12,505,000 shillings, out of which there was 325,000 shillings represented subscription in arrears. All right. 11.4 million represented subscription for the year ended while 225,000 was subscription received in advance. The club received, number 3, the club received donations amounting to 7.8 million for repairing a roof that was leaking and 12,250,000 for putting up a new building. Number 4, the 100,000 shares which the club acquired in BD Limited paid a dividend of 3 shillings per share. Number 5, office furniture acquired during the year ended 31st December cost the club 5 million. Half of the amount was paid, and the balance is to be paid during the year ending 31st March 2025. Number 6, during the year ended 31st March 2024, the club started printing magazines for sale to the public. As at 31st March 2024, the club had printed 35,000 magazines at a cost of 120 shillings and sold 32.5 million magazines at a price of 170,000 shillings each. Number 7, other payments made during the year ended 31st March 2024 included number 1, salaries and wages amounting to 10.5 million, of which 500,000 relates to the year ended 31st March 2023. Number 2, rent and rates amounting to 2,550,000 shillings, whereby 50,000 was owing at 1st April 2023. Number 3, meeting expenses amounting to 2,445,000. Number 4, stationery, postage and interest charges amounting to 2,250,000 shillings. Required subscriptions account for the year ended 31st March 2024. B, Roman 1, subscriptions account for the year ended 31st March 2024. Subscriptions account. That's the question. So the first point we read, Rahisi Social Club provided the following information from the records for the year ended 31st March 2024. Number 1, as at 1st April 2023, the club's bank balance amounted to 7,050,000 shillings. So candidates, we need to look for information related to subscriptions account. Number 1 is not related to subscriptions account. Number 2, during the year ended 31st March, the amount of subscription received amounted to 12,525,000 shillings, out of which there was 325,000 shillings represented subscription in arrears. Okay, so out of the 12,525,000, 325,000 represented subscriptions in arrears. Then 11.4 million represented subscription for the current year. Represented subscription for the current year. Right? While 225,000 shillings was subscription received in advance. Subscription received in advance. That will be subscription at the end of the accounting period. Then we have the 325,000, which is subscription received or represented in arrears. So what does that mean, candidates? There is a subscription of 12,525,000 that was received during this accounting period. Out of this money, 325,000 represented subscription in arrears. Now, these are subscriptions for the previous accounting period, meaning that at the beginning of this accounting period, there was a balance brought down of 325,000. That is subscriptions in arrears at the beginning of the accounting period. Do you understand? Because this is an income account. Is an income account. But if it's an expense account, expense in arrears at the beginning, we credit. Do you understand? But given that subscriptions is an income account, subscriptions at the beginning, we debit. Then look at the next point, that is 11.4 million represented subscriptions for the year, subscriptions for the year, meaning that at the end of this year, at the end of this 31st March 2024, there was also a balance at the end. Balance at the end. This is subscriptions in arrears at the end of 11.4 million. You understand? These are balances. One at the beginning, another one at the end. Do you understand that, candidates? Then we read, look at the same note number 2. Look at that same note number 2. It says, while 225,000 was subscriptions received in advance. Subscriptions received in advance. First of all, there is these subscriptions in advance. Subscriptions received in advance. Tell me, candidates, subscriptions received in advance, do we debit the subscriptions account or do we credit the subscriptions account? Subscriptions received in advance. Can someone try that? Let me take the question again for you. It says, during the year ended 31st March 2024, the amount of subscriptions received was 12,525,000 525. 12,525,000. Now let's, before we come to distribution of that money, look at the board. Look at the board. First of all, the 12,525 was received during this year. So what's the accounts that are affected by that transaction? We have the subscriptions account and the bank account or receipts and payment account. So let me open because the next account here, number 2, is the receipts and payments account, which is the equivalent of a bank account if it is a profit-making organization. So when subscriptions are received, the receipts and payment is first of all debited with subscriptions of 12,500. 12,500. No, 12,525. 12,525. So this bank or receipts and payments account is debited. Then the subscriptions account has to be credited with the receipts and payments. Let's take it step by step. So on this account, before making any of these entries, let's take it step by step. So first of all, we read that during the year ended 31st March 2024, the amount of received amounted to 12,525,000. So we have 12,525,000. That's the first transaction. You credit subscriptions account because it's an income account. When money is received on an income account is credited. When money is paid in an expense account, the expense account is debited and the bank credited. So that's the first transaction. Now it is this money that candidates we need now to apportion, because this money is not in relation to this accounting period. This money, as we read from the information, out of which there was 325,000 that represented subscriptions in arrears. That represented, I want you to look at that statement. Look at that statement. That represented subscriptions in arrears. That represented subscriptions in arrears. How much is it? That is 325,000. Those are subscriptions in arrears. So we have to credit subscriptions in arrears. 325. Subscriptions in arrears or balance brought down. Okay, balance brought down or subscriptions in arrears. I'm using this term so that you understand the effect. By debiting this account, we are reducing that amount because part of this amount relates to the year ended 31st March 2023. Do you understand? Is that clear? Is that clear? Let's move together like that. Okay. Then look at the 11.4. It says 11.4 million represented subscriptions for the year. Which year? The year ended 31st March 2024. That is subscriptions for the year. So are we going to debit this account or do we credit this account? Subscriptions for the year. Subscriptions for the year. So do we debit this account or do we credit the account? Can you try? Brace. Do we debit the 11.4 or should we credit? Subscriptions for the year. Are you going to debit or credit? Abdullah says debit. That is true. We debit 11,400. What should be the narration? Give me the narration. Give me the narration, Abdullah. And we have to understand, if you are debiting, why do we debit? If you are crediting, why do we credit, so that you understand. So Abdullah is right to say we debit, but the narration candidates is income and expenditure. Income and expenditure. So the subscriptions account is debited and income and expenditure credited. Income and expenditure is like a profit and loss account for profit-making organizations, and we know that in the profit and loss account, incomes are credited. Subscriptions is an income, so it is credited. It is added to the other incomes. So out of the 12,525,000, 11.4 million relates to this current accounting period. So that's why we debit, so that this amount is reduced by 11,400. Then we read on, candidates, that while 225,000 was subscription received in advance, part of this amount, there is an amount equivalent to 225,000 which was received in advance. So do we debit that amount or are we going to credit? Cynthia says debit. That is correct. We debit 225. These are subscriptions received in advance. Out of the 12,505,000, there is this 225 which has been received in advance. That is to mean that the 225 does not relate to this accounting period, but to the next one. It was received in advance. It is a prepayment. So by debiting, we are reducing the 225 from the amount that was received, because this amount relates to the next accounting period. Do you understand? Is that clear? Is that clear? Then let's read on and check if there is any other transaction that relates to the subscriptions account. Do you have any other? No. So what we do next is to balance off that account. 12,525. So give me the balance. It is 12. This is 11. there must be a balance here on this side. For this is 3 plus 4 plus 2, that is 9. So there is a balance here, balance carried down. What is the balance on that account? Kohenzi says 575. 575. 575. Is that true? Yes. Rita confirms 575. Now, is this 575,000 at the end, is it accrued balance or prepayment? This 575. Someone help me out. Is the 575 an accrual or a prepayment at the end? The balance that appears on the debit side at the end. Give it a try. Perita. Identify this one, if it is subscriptions in arrears or subscriptions received in advance. Because candidates, we all know that if it is an expense account, if you have amount that was paid here during the period, it could be, say, rent or any other expense. Subscriptions at the end, we always credit at the end, meaning that the amount that remains outstanding should be added to what was paid to get the total rent for the period. Because what you take to the profit and loss account or the income and expenditure account is what was paid plus what was not paid for that period. If it is a rent of say 1 million per month and only 11 million has been paid, that means that there is 1 million that is outstanding. This 11 million must be added to that was paid, must be added to what was not paid to have the total of 12 million. So that in the profit and loss account or the income and expenditure account, what appears is the total rent expense, whether it was not paid or not. And given that this is an expense account, when it comes to an income account like subscriptions account, any arrears that remains outstanding at the end, okay, is the opposite. So this will appear, if it is arrears, it will appear on this side, okay, because here we have, just as we've seen here, the double entry for income and expenditure, okay, if this is, says, subscriptions. And candidates, you have to get this right because you must be tested on this concept in your exam. It has to be tested. If you are asking which questions will be tested, then this one must be tested in your exam. Okay, that's why I'm taking time, and it may be tested in almost all questions under additional information. Okay, so this is an income. If you know, candidates, that expense in arrears at the end is credited, debited, the opposite is true when it comes to the subscriptions or an income account. If this one is due or unpaid at the end, as for the income account, we'll have unpaid or due on the credit side. So this one is arrears or due at the end, it is an expense account. If it is an income account, then this will not be due but in advance, and therefore balance appearing on the debit side of an income account, this is balance carried down. This is subscriptions received in advance. All right, that's very important, candidates. Do you understand? Is that clear now? Perita, Mwangi, Purity, and the rest, Abdallah? Do you understand why I'm calling this one subscriptions in arrears at the end? It's debited. And that is what was required for the subscriptions account. These are how many marks? 4 marks. Then we move to the receipts and payments account. Look at the first item there. It says that as at 1st April 2023, that is the beginning of the accounting period that ends at 31st March 2024. When you go back, the opening date is 1st April 2023. We read that the club's bank balance amounted to 7,050,000 bank balance. All right, bank balance. That will be the opening entry in the receipts and payments account, which you have said is the equivalent of a bank account. So here we need to push this down 525 so that we have a balance appearing on the debit side here. These are subscriptions. Then this is balance brought down 7050. That's it. Then we read through the question and check for any payments or receipts. It is receipts and payment. Whatever amount was received, we debit. What if there's any payment, we credit. Note number 3 says the club received donations amounting to 7.8 million for repairing a roof that was leaking and 12,250,000 for putting up a new building. For putting up a new building. Do you see that? Donations. Donations, that is a receipt. So we debit on the receipt side. Donations of 7.8 million. Note number 3. The club received donations amount of 7.8 for donations for repairing a roof that was leaking and 12,250,000, all right, 250,000 for putting up a new building. For putting up a new building. That is also a donation. New building. So donations are in 2 parts. Donations, see, that is plural. So there is 7.8 for repairing a roof that was leaking, and another donation of 12,250. This donation is for putting up a new building. Donation for putting up a new building. Do you see that? That is note number 3. Look at note number 4. The 100,000 shares which the club acquired in BD Limited paid a dividend of 1 of 3 shillings per share. Okay, do you see that? Dividend. So the company, this club invested in shares, all right, which paid, this investment paid dividends of 3 shillings per share. So candidates, what is the total dividends? It will be 100,000 shares times the 3 shillings per share, which is equal to 300,000. That is a receipt. So we debit, we write dividends. Dividends of 300,000. That is note number 4. In note number 5, we read that office furniture acquired during the year ended 31st March 2024 cost the club 5 million. Half of the amount was paid and the balance is to be paid during the year ending 31st March 2025. So how much was paid? Half of the amount was paid. That is office furniture. That is payment. So we are going to credit here office furniture 2.5 million, half. The rest was paid in the next accounting period. In note number 6, we read that during the year ended 31st March 2024, the club started printing magazines for sale to the public. As at 31st March 2024, the club had printed 35,000 magazines at a cost of 120. All right, that is printing. So that is the cost. So what will be the total cost of printing the magazine? Printing of magazines will be 35,000 magazines times 120 shillings. No, 35,000 times 120 shillings. How much is it, somebody? That is printing of magazines. That is an expense. We credit printing magazines. How much is it? 4.2 million. 4.2 million. That is printing. And how many magazines were sold? And sold 32,500 magazines at 170 shillings each. So they sold and received 170 shillings each. So multiply 32,500 magazines times 170. That is a receipt. How much is it? Those are sales. Magazines, sales. Give me the total. Abdullah says 55.25. 55.25 is the magazine sales. 55.25. Then we move on to note number 7. Other payments made during the year ended 31st included salaries and wages amounting to 10.5 million, of which 500 relates to the year ended 31st. So that is salaries and wages. How much relates to this year? It's 500,000 salaries and wages. Then you have rent and rates amounting to 2,550,000, whereby 50 was owing as at 1st April 2023. So we have rent and rates. So candidates, we need to have a working for that, so that help you understand what I'm rubbing here, what I had explained here. So we have rent and rates, rent and rates account. So we read here that rent and rates amounting to 2250 was made. So the receipts and payment was credited, and rent, this was credited with receipts and payments amounting to 2250, 2550. But we read that whereby 50,000 was owed as at 1st April 2023. That is the beginning of the accounting period. April 2020, April 2023. Okay, April 2023. Do you understand? So, candidates, this rent account, before this money was paid, there was a balance on this account. Balance brought down. This is rent account for 2023, because this is 2024. I want you to understand this concept. That's why I'm taking time. 2023. In 2023, candidates, remember we say that arrears at the end for an expense account, we debit. So at the end of this period, there was balance carried down of 50,000. This is at the end of 2023. So this at the end of 2023, this balance at the end in 2024, you bring it down. Balance brought down 50. You understand? This one at the end, you bring it down in 2024. This is 2024. So there is a balance at the end of, at the beginning of this period of 50. Meaning that the difference relates to the period 2024. Do you understand, candidates? We read, let me take it again. Rent and rates amounting to 2550, whereby 50,000 was owed as at 1st of April 2023. So the whole of this amount was received. So it is documented in the receipts and payments of 2550. But if you are to prepare an income and expenditure account, the amount will be 2550 income and expenditure less 50, which will be 2500. If you are to prepare an income and expenditure account, but because it's money that is received, the whole of it is credited. Do you understand? Yes. Meeting expenses amounted to 2470. Meeting expenses amounted to 2475. 2475. Stationery, postage, and internet amounting to 2250. So you have stationery, postage, and internet. Internet 2250. So those are other expenses made during the year ended 31st March 2024. Salaries and wages. Salaries and wages. How much do you record? Salaries and wages was how much? Was 10,500, not 500, but 10,500. Salaries and wages. Receipts and payments account will record all the amount that is received. So give me the balance on this account. What is the balance? What is the balance? Is it a debit balance or credit balance? Kaenzi says 45,450. 45,450. So 29,75 is the balance. Balance carried down 29,75. So this is an overdraft. 45,450 is an overdraft. It is not an overdraft. This side is more than the other side. So it's a debit balance at the end. Can someone else confirm? Perita confirms. So candidates, we've answered April 2024, the last question. We will, in our next class, answer more questions from the other sittings. Bye-bye.